Hi everyone, John Hales here, coming to you from My Healthy Church. I wanted to take a few moments to explain the scope and sequence for Tru Fire Wonder. Wonder is typically designed for preschool and kindergarten children. To download the scope and sequence for each of our age levels, you should head to the website at trufirecurriculum.com and click on the resource link in the top header. The scope and sequence is a big picture overview of the specific curriculum line. It outlines the different lessons that will be taught over a given period of time and the order in which they are taught. Tru Fire Wonder has a 3-year scope and sequence. Each year users go through the whole Bible chronologically, from Genesis to Revelation. However, each year emphasizes different topics and focuses on different stories in the Bible. Over the 3 years, children gain a full picture of the Bible's grand narrative. There are a few things worth noting about the scope and sequence. In order to avoid confusion and overwhelming our users, the scope and sequence contains the outline for only the current year. This reduces the document size and makes it easier to find your place. When you purchase Tru Fire, you will be given access to an editable scope and sequence on the digital platform. This means that you can modify the document to fit your church's schedule. The scope and sequence begins in September with Genesis and it ends the following August in Revelation. However, we encourage new users to plan a start date that works for your church and then jump in at any point. The lessons do take children through the Bible chronologically, but they also make an exception for Christmas, where the focus is on Jesus' birth, and Easter, where we focus on his death and resurrection. There is also a special emphasis on the day of Pentecost. Each quarter runs for 13 weeks. In each quarter there are 2 Remembrance Celebrate weeks. These weeks are designed for children to break from their regular routine. Each time they briefly highlight an Old Testament feast to explain the importance of remembering what we have learned and celebrating the things God has done. It's worth noting that for certain quarters there are often additional lessons offered for churches to use. If a quarter has an additional lesson, you'll be able to see it at the end of that quarter on the scope and sequence. The scope and sequence outlines specific things for each lesson. The first column determines the lesson number. The second column reveals the suggested weekend that the lesson should be taught. The third column shows the ponder point for that given lesson. The ponder point is the God-centered teaching point for the lesson. This column also shows the person or biblical story that the Big God story will focus on. The next column outlines the biblical passages that will be covered in the Big God story. The last column will outline the Remember verse that is assigned for children to learn that week. Remember verses are typically learned for between 3 and 5 weeks. Lastly, it's important to note that once every 4 weeks in the scope and sequence, you will see an asterisk by the lesson number. When the asterisk is present, it means there is a full-length storytelling video to use in the extra resources. This video is provided for free and is downloaded with the other lesson material.